Nazir.
Nazir, we're starting with Gimel Vav.
Yeah.
Someone who declared a Naziris of long duration and completed his term of Naziris after he came to the land of Israel. Beis Shammai says he is a Nazir for 30 days. Basil says he is Nazir as at first. It happened with Queen Helena, that her son went to war, and she declared that if my son returns in peace from the war, I shall be a Nazirah for 7 years. Her son returned from the war, and she was a Nazirah for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, she went up to the land of Israel. Thus Hillel rules for her that she must be a Nazirah for another 7 years. At the end of these 7 years, she became Tameh, so it resulted that he was a Nazirah for 21 years. Rabbi Yehuda said she was a Nazirah for only 14 years. Someone about whom two sets of witnesses are testifying. These testify that he declared 2 terms of Naziris, and these testify that he declared 5 terms of Naziris. Beis Shammai said the testimony is split, and there is no Naziris here, but Beis Hillel says 2 is included in 5, so that is a Nazir for 2 terms. And someone who said, I am a Nazir, and his friend heard and said, and I, they are all Nazir. And the first is released, they are all released. The last is released, the last is permitted. But all the others are bound. If he said, I am a Nazir, and his friend heard and said, my mouth is like his mouth, my hair is like his hair, he is a Nazir. If he said, I am a Nazir, and his wife heard and said, and he may revoke hers, but his stands. And if she said, I am a Nazira, and her husband heard it and said, he cannot revoke it. Okay.
Okay. Similarly, Hareini Nazir, the husband says to his wife, almost provoking her, says, I'm gonna be a Nazir. What about you? The Amra, Amen. Yeah. She says, okay, fine, I'll take the invitation. And he says, psych, Mayfair is Sheila. He can say, sorry, I was just kidding you. No, I'm Mayfair. V'shelo kayam. Yeah, okay, he can do that. His question to her of whether she wants to be a Nazira is not necessarily an endorsement. However, if he had phrased it differently, um, no, it's not in this commentary. It's in the Art Scroll commentary. Let me quickly find um, how they phrased it there. Um, uh,
It says that he
If,
cannot
if,
revoke.
if he had if he had told her to become a Nazira like himself and she agreed, then he's considered to have confirmed her vow and he can't cancel it. So if he told her to, you should be. If he said to her, you should be a Nazira, and she said, okay, yeah, I'm with you, then he can't be Mayfair because that's like a preemptive endorsement of her
Mm,
Naziris. But
right.
here he just asked her straight, neutrally, are you going to be? And she said yes, and he says, no, you're not. Okay. أنا يدخل لها Gimel. Ha-isha shin nadra ben Nazir. Okay, so the woman decides that she's going to be a Nazir. V'haisa shosa b'yayin, and and after she declared herself a Nazir, she went and drank wine or became tameh to the dead. Hare zos sofeges es arba'im. She is liable to 40 lashes. Okay, that's anyone who violates a Torah mitzvah like that is gets well, we call it 40 lashes because that's shorthand because
Right.
that's how it's expressed in the Torah, but it's actually 39. Hey Fairla Bala, what happens if her husband annulled her vow? Okay. V'hi lo yad'a shehe Fairla Bala, and she didn't know that he had annulled her vow. Okay. V'haisa shosa b'yainu mitzama l'meisim. Um, okay. So she wasn't aware that her vow had been annulled, and she was going ahead and violating everything. Ena sofeget es arbaim. She doesn't get the 40 lashes because her husband had actually annulled it. And Lamase, even though she thought she was violating it, she wasn't actually. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, im ena sofeget es arbaim tisbog makas mardos. Um, she should nonetheless get rabbinic lashes for her deliberate violation of what she thought was an avera, and she should get lashed for that at least. By the way, just to be clear, Mishnah Gimel at the beginning of the Mishnah, we're talking about a situation even where the husband later revoked her vow. Right, so the timeline is she becomes a Nazira, and then she starts drinking wine and whatever, and then the husband finds out about this whole thing and says, no, 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 she's not a she. I'm Mayfair. I don't want her to be a Nazira. Okay. Now, if she had gone to get Hataras Nadarim from a Chacham, The Hataras Nedarim is retroactive and makes it as if she never made the vow. Okay, that is how Hatara works, is that you get this charata. So if I'd known, then I wouldn't have done it. And the whole thing is done b'taos and it's uprooted from the beginning. Hafara is from now and onwards. Okay, it's not like he is, and that, by the way, is an important thing to bear in mind for the next mission we're going to go into. When a husband revokes a vow of his wife, it's not retroactive. It's from now onwards.
Right.
Okay. Isha shin nadra ben Nazir, Mishna Dalet. V'hifrisha es behemta. So she decided that she was going to be Nazira, and she's busy keeping her Nazirus, and her husband doesn't know anything about this yet. And she goes into her husband's flock and designates three animals for her completion ceremony. And this could be even like already she's on day 29 and she's getting ready to she's getting ready for her closing ceremony of being a Nazira. And her husband comes and says, "What you doing with these animals?" And she says, "Oh, didn't you know I made myself a Nazira and I'm going." And he says, "No way! I'm not having my wife having her hair shaven and whatever. I'm Mayfair." Boom. So now she's no longer a Nazira. But she's been in Nazira for however long until now. And when she designated these animals, she was a Nazira. So now what do you do with these animals? Well, let's take a look in the Mishnah.
They have
Okay, so,
Kedusha. They
huh?
have Kedusha. They have Kedusha now, the animals,
So,
right?
well, maybe and maybe not. Depends. Let's see. אחר כך הפר לבעלה. אם שלא הייתה בהמתה, if the animals belonged to the husband, which in times of Mishnah was the typical arrangement, is that everything belongs to the husband, but the wife has got free use of them, which means anytime that a wife needs to bring a korban, it's expected that a husband will give her the animal for a korban. Okay, but the animals nonetheless are in under the title of her husband. Okay. Teitse v'sira ba'eder. He's cancelled it means her designation has no effect because a person cannot be makdish something that's not theirs.
Right.
Okay. However, im she'la haisa behemta, let's say these are actually her animals. However, that comes to be whether it's because they have an arrangement where they do own each other's property, their own property, and she earns her own living and whatever. Okay. Im Shelah Haisa Behemta. Okay, so she designated them when she was in a state of Naziris, and now they are validly declared. Only that she's now no longer a Nazira. So what happens with the Khatas? Well, you cannot bring a Khatas for that when it's not as a voluntary offering. So the Khatas has to be left to die. You cannot do anything else with it. It's been designated as a khatas. It's the similar situation when you have a khatas of somebody where the person who was bringing the khatas died before he could bring it. Okay, so the khatas must die. Ha'ola tikrav ola. However, the ola it can also be brought as a voluntary offering. So whatever she designated as an ola must come as an ola. But shlamim yikrivu shlamim, and the shlamim can also be brought as a voluntary offering. But there's a difference. Normally, shlamim can be eaten over a period of 2 days and the intervening night. However, when the shlamim that's brought by a nazir can only be eaten for 1 day and 1 night. Okay, and it has to be brought with these loaves, which we'll go into later. Okay, nechalin liyom echad. So because the shlamim was originally designated for a nazir, we keep the same kedusha that it has to be eaten within 1 day. Ve'enan to'enim lechem. However, you do not bring bread with it, which you would have brought if you were a nazir. Hayula ma'os stumim. Now, instead of bringing animals, she just took money and said, "Okay, this money is designated for my korbanos." Okay, now the money has attracted a kedusha. So if she hasn't yet separated out which money is being used for which korban, that's called stumim. So it's unspecified. Yiplun and dava, then all the money can go into the dava chest in the mikdash. Ma'as mufurashim, if she separated out, this is for an ola, this is for a khatas, this is for shlamim. Okay. The may khatas, so the money for the khatas, once again, like a khatas that whose owner has died, that has to be left to die, the money is now asr bahana, cannot be used anywhere. Yelchu liyam she must go and throw it in the Dead Sea, so it'll never be seen again. Lo ne'enim v'lo mo'alim bahin. You cannot benefit from it, but there's no din of me'ilah because it's not something that could ever be used. So if somebody misused it, there's no korban me'ilah for it. What do you do with the Demei Ola? Yavi Ola. Use that to buy an Ola. Or Moalin Bahim. And that does have a din of Me'ila because it's been designated for an Ola. Demei Shlamim. Yavi Shlamim. For the Shlamim money is used to buy Shlamim. And like the case of the actual animal, Nechalim Liyom Echad Ve'enan Tonim Lechem. You can eat its period is 1 day, 1 night, and does not require bread. Okay.
The use of the bread is for so it's for a meal. So you daven
Yeah,
Birchas
yeah.
Hamazon.
Like the Korban Toda, you bring four
Right.
different types of bread. With his Nazir brings two different types of bread. Also, so basically 20 loaves, 10 loaves of
Okay.
each type, and that's brought along with the shlamim. So it's for consumption. Some of it gets given to the Kohen again, and some of it is eaten by the Nazir and his or her family.
I hope so because it's a lot of bread.
Yeah.
So, all right. Gimel base. Gimel, no, Gimel base, right? He one
Aleph base.
olive base. I meant Gimel
Yeah,
base.
that's right.
One who says I'm a Nazir from grape seeds or that from grape skins or from haircuts or from Tuma, he is a Nazir, and all the details of Nazir supply to him. One who says I am like Shimshon, like the son of Manoach, like the husband of Delilah, like that, like him who goes out toward the gate out the gates of Gaza, and like him who the Philistines gouge out his eyes, and like a Simpsonite Nazir. What is the difference between a permanent Nazir and a Simpsonite Nazir? Nazir, a permanent Nazir, if his hair grows heavy, he may lighten it with a razor. He brings three animals, and then if he becomes tummy, he brings the sacrifice for Tuma. A Samsonite Nazir, if his hair grows heavy, he must not lighten it, and becomes tummy, he does not bring the sacrifice for Tuma. Standard Nazir is for 30 days. If he said, I'm a Nazir for one large term, or for one Nazir for one small term, or even from here until the end of the world, he's a Nazir for 30 days. One who says, I'm a Nazir for 1 day, I'm a Nazir for 1 hour, or I'm a Nazir for 1 term and a half, he's a Nazir for 2 terms. If he says, I'm a Nazir for 30 days or 1 hour, he is a Nazir for 31 days because one cannot extend Naziris by hours. If he says, I'm a Nazir as much as the hair on my head, or the dust on the earth, or the sand of the sea, he is a Nazir forever, and he shaves his head once every 30 days. Rebbe says this one does not shave his head once every 30 days. Who is the one who shaves his head at once every 30 days? One who says, let there be an obligation of Naziris upon me, as much as the hair on my head, or as the dust of the earth, or as the sand of the sea. Okay. Nadarim?
Nadaim, Aleph base.
Okay. Okay. One who says to another Kohanim, Kohanak, or Kohanos, these are the equivalents for Koban. Cherek, Cherech, as Keref, these are equivalents of Kerem, Nazik, and Naziak for Paziak. These are equivalents of Nazir, Shavuaso, or Shakuaka, or one who swore using the term Mosa. These are equivalents for Shavua. One who says, not chulin, I shall not eat from you, unfit or not permissible, ritually poor or ritually contaminated, leftover sacrificial meat or pickle. These declarations are binding. Like a lamb, like the enclosures, like the logs, like the fires, like the altar, like the sanctuary, like Jerusalem, or he vowed and made reference to one of the accessories of the altar, even though he did not mention the korban, he has vowed with reference to an offering. Rabbi Huda says one who stays Jerusalem has not said anything. One who says offering, burnt offering, meal offering, sin offering, thanksgiving offering, or peace offering has that which I eat of yours, it is binding, and remember permits it. HaKorban, ki korban, or korban, that which I eat is of yours, is binding. The korban I shall not eat of yours, for Meah prohibits it. One who says to another, call my mouth from talking with you, my hand from working with you, or my feet from walking with you, it is binding. Okay. Moed Cotton.
Moed Katan.
Okay, I'm saving the two Zavakim and Power on the outside here. I don't know which we're doing. Okay. Um, and these documents may be written during Kolamoid instruments of betrothal, divorces, receipt testaments, gifts, postmortem, evaluation documents, support documents, Chalitza certificates, refusals, selection contracts, court edicts, and government documents. We may not write long contracts during Kolamoid. However, if he did not trust him or if it's not nothing to eat, he may write. We may not write books of scripture or tefillin or mezuzahs during Kol HaMoed. We may not correct a single letter, even in the Torah scroll of the temple court. Rabbi Yehuda says a person may write tefillin or mezuzahs for his personal use. and he may spin the blue blades where it sits on his thigh. He who buries his dead relative for 3 days before a festival has an edict of 7 days of mourning annulled. He who buries his dead relative 8 days before a festival has an edict of 30 days of mourning annulled. This is so because they said the Sabbath is included in the period of mourning, but does not interrupt it. Festivals, however, interrupt but are not included. Okay.
Okay.
And now on to Orla. Oh, yeah. Okay, Orla. We have base cat. Um, uh, uh,
Stop.
um, uh, where are we? Okay. If heavenly of Kulim fell into Dol and it suffices to
Hold on.
leaven,
Stop. 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 Orla base Vav. That's yeah.
five. Those take of Kafar
No, no,
Yitva was.
it's number six.
I'm not concerned with what they did this say, without whatever causes ferment or flavors or which renders Meduma the ruling of stringent. In the case of like kinds, stringently and leniently, they are of different kinds. How so? If leaven of wheat fell into dough of wheat and typhus of leaven it, whether it outweighed by 100 to 1 or is not outweighed by 100 to 1, is forbidden. If it is not outweighed by 100 to 1, then whether it suffices to cause fermentation, it does not, or it does not suffice to cause fermentation, it's forbidden. Surgently and leniently, they are all different kinds. How so? For instance, crushed beans have been cooked with lentils, and they are part of flavor. Whether they are outweighed by 100 to 1, or they're not outweighed by 100 to 1, it is forbidden. If they're not a part of flavor, whether they are outweighed by 100 to 1, or they are not outweighed by 100 to 1, it is permitted. If leaven of chulin fell into dough and leavened it, and the leaven of truma or leaven of karen fell into it, and it suffices to leaven, it is forbidden. But Rebbe Shimon permits it. Okay. And we have Zora. A man takes precedence over a woman in matters pertaining to life and to returning a lost article. A woman takes precedence over a man.
Hold on. Where you're in Horizon. We're starting with para now.
Oh, so a power now. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. All right, power. All right. Power. There we go. One Aleph. Rabbi Eliezer says the term Egla means within her first year, and the term Para means within her second year. But the sages say term Egla means in her second year, while Para means in her third and fourth year. Mary Mayer says even her 50 of the elderly cow is acceptable, but we not wait for her lest she turn black in order that it not become disqualified. Said Rabbi Yeshua, I did not hear any term other than shalashis. They said to him, what is the word shalashis? He said to them, this is what I've heard without explanation. They've been asked, I shall explain. If you say shalishis, this means with respect to others and can count. But if you say shalishas, it means a 3-year-old. Similarly, what they said, a Ravia vineyard, they said to him, what is the word in Revi? He said to them, this is what I've heard without explanation. But as I said, I shall explain. If you say Revi, it means with reference to others in a list. But when you say Revaya, it means 4 years old. Similarly, they said if someone eats a taras afflicted house, half a loaf of pea per kav, they said to him, say of 18 to a saw. He said to them, so I've received without explanation. Ben Azza says, I shall explain. If you say 3 per kav, and there's no challah, but if you say of 18 per saw, and its challah portion reduces it. Rabbi Yossi Agili says parim are within their second year, as it is stated, a second bullock you shall take for Katas offering. But the sages say even within the third year, Bemea says, even within the fourth year and even within the fifth year, they are permitted, except that we do not bring older animals because of considerations of dignity. Lambs are within their first year, and rams are within the second year. And with all of them, the year is reckoned from birthday to birthday. A sheep is in its 13th month is acceptable neither as a ram or a lamb. Reb Tarfon calls it palgas. Reb Azza calls it nichod. Reb Ishmael calls it pakadema. If he offered it, he brings it with the libations of a ram, but he does not count toward the obligated offering. It is 13 months and a day. Okay. And the ram. It is a ram.
Okay. And Horaios.
All right. A man takes precedence over a woman in matters pertaining to life and returning a lost article. A woman takes precedence over a man in matters pertaining to clothing and releasing her from captivity. However, if they both stand to be molested, a man takes precedence over a woman. A Kohen takes precedence over a Levi takes precedence over a Yisrael takes precedence over a Mamzer takes precedence over a Nitzanite takes precedence over a convert, and a convert takes precedence over a freed slave. When is this? When they're all equal, but if the mamzer is a Torah scholar and the Kohen Gadol is ignorant, the mamzer who is a Torah scholar takes precedence over the Kohen Gadol who is ignorant.
Hadran
Hazallah.
Allah, Maseches Harayas, Hadran Allah, Seder Nezikin.
Here
And the first Mishnah of Zevachim.
we go. Great. Okay. I'm getting there. Come on. Okay. All sacrifices which have been slaughtered for a designation other than their own are valid, but they are not credited to the owner as fulfillment of his obligation, except for the Pesach and Katas offering. The Pesach offering in its proper time, the Katas offering at all times. Because Eliezer says, also the Asham offering. The Pesach offering in its proper time, and the Katas and Asham offerings at all times. Says Rabbi Eliezer, the Katas offering comes to atone for a sin, the Asham comes to atone for a sin, just as the Katas offering is disqualified if he is intended for a designation other than its own, so too the Asham offering is disqualified if he intended for a designation other than its own. Okay.
Okay. Have a wonderful Shabbos.
Have a great Shabbos. Enjoy.
Mm.
And they have anything going on for Yom Yerushalayim? There are programs going on.
Next week. Wait, is it next week? Yeah, it's next week, right? Yeah, it's
Yeah,
next week.
I think Mayor is having some
Yeah.
reduction thing they're doing. So, see,
Okay.
have a
Cheers.
great Shabbos. Enjoy. Thank you. Bye.